Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Russell here and I'm going to be doing your lesson this week on analysing drama. You will recognise lots of the things we're doing from past lessons. We're following the same kind of format with you looking at extracts, looking at questions and developing your essay style paragraph writing. We're doing this so you can embed those skills and really build your confidence on something that you're going to need to know right through to your Year 11 exams. So today we're going to be reading an extract from a play called Noughts and Crosses, which is by a lady called Mallory Blackman. We're going to look at another exam question, pull it apart and think about what our response to it may be. And to do that we're going to examine the writer's use of language, structure and look a little bit at stage directions as well and think about what they may suggest. Okay, so before we go and look at our question, I'm just going to do a quick reminder or recap to those of you who are feeling a little bit shaky about play scripts. So if you have a look at this one, it's an extract from Romeo and Juliet. And we're not going to do Romeo and Juliet today, as you know, but this was a good one to look at in terms of how a script is laid out. So if you have a look at the green arrows, they're pointing to some words that are in italics. Now usually if you see those, that's sort of indicating to us that these are stage directions. So at the top of the extract that you've got there, it's more detailed and it's describing what the stage will look like, what the setting's like, setting the scene for what the characters might be doing as well. This is great for directors so that they can design their stage and plan out what the opening of perhaps a scene is going to look like. It helps the actors prepare for what they're about to be performing. And for us, if we're just reading this at home and not lucky enough to see it on the stage, then this helps us try and imagine the situation. And it's almost like a little bit of a description really, because there isn't a lot of that in a play. The second green arrow points to the bottom and you can see it's just before some dialogue that a character's going to say. And this sort of tells us how the characters might be acting. It shows the characters, or the actors playing the characters, what they should do, but it's also, again, for us today, it will tell us how a character's behaving and perhaps give us some clues to how they're feeling. The blue arrow is pointing to character names. Now you'll see these down the left-hand side of the script and it indicates who is speaking when. In a play script, we don't get the same as a novel where it tells us that a character is saying something. So you might have Mr. Smith mumbled in disagreement in a novel, but in a play text they don't have that, so you just have the character's name down the side and then what they have to say. The red arrow is pointing to that dialogue, so this is the main body of the text. It tells us what the characters are saying and it's also indicating to the actors what their lines are. Okay, so now you just had a quick refresh of what to expect when we look at our play script. We'll just have a look at the question we've got today. So we're going to do the same as we have in previous lessons. Have a look at this question and then we're going to pull it apart and break down what it's actually asking us. So today's question is, how does the writer create tension in scene 20 of the play Noughts and Crosses? And I've popped a little front cover on there as well, like I did with the Graveyard book, because I think this gives us clues for those of you that don't know this story on what it may be about. If you haven't seen this, it is I think it's a trilogy of novels by a lady called Mallory Blackman, and this has been interpreted into a play and it's also recently been turned into a BBC drama, which I think is still on iPlayer if you want to check it out. So let's have a look at this question in a little more detail. So as usual, we're looking at our first word there, and it's the word how. Now immediately this should be a word that you're used to seeing, and it should be a word that now starts to make you think of, well, this is asking me what words the writer is using, so their language, what techniques they are using, and what structure they are using if you feel like it's appropriate. This connects nicely to that word create there. Again, it's how does the writer create? So this is reminding you as students that this is not a real story, okay? This is something that has been crafted and made up by a writer, and everything they are putting down on that piece of paper is a deliberate choice to try and have an effect on the reader or to make us think something or learn something about the characters. The next word I think is important to focus on is that word tension. Hopefully you're all familiar with that word, but in case you aren't, if you hear the word tension, I often think of the music in the film Jaws at the point where the shark's about to go and get the boat. However, for those of you that haven't seen the film Jaws, it's things like emotions such as worry, fear, anxiety and stress that are put onto us as a reader, but also we see the characters experiencing in the piece of writing. Finally, I've just done a little arrow from the title Noughts and Crosses. If you're answering this in an exam, you'd probably know the text perhaps. However, the title should give you clues about the type of tension we may see. The game Noughts and Crosses means that you take a side each. So this is implying that there are two sides in this story. So perhaps we're seeing some tension between these two sides, which you can probably link to the front cover that we saw briefly on a couple of slides ago. Okay, before we look at our extract, I just want to show you this slide again, and you will have seen it before in past PowerPoints that we've done. When we are talking about how a writer is creating effect, we must have in mind this idea of language, techniques and structure. So a little recap for you: when we're looking at language, we're just looking at what vocabulary choices has the writer made. Why have I chosen this word over another word? When we're thinking of techniques, okay, we are looking at different literary devices that the writer has used. So in the Graveyard Book, we looked at pathetic fallacy and metaphors. And then finally the structure. Now, when we're looking at play scripts, that can be things such as exits and entrances of characters, as well as sentence lengths and things like that. Okay, so here's the extract that I'm going to read to you today. Sort of a pre-warning, it's going to sound strange me reading this extract, because obviously plays are meant to be read by various different characters with different voices, and you're supposed to see the action on stage, whereas you're going to have me reading the part of 3 different people and the stage directions. So as I sit here, I'll try and put on my best acting, but don't show Mr. Shorts because he probably won't be impressed. Before I read that to you, if you aren't familiar with this story, then there's a little bit of background in the red text on the screen at the moment. So this story is about a girl called Sephi, who is in the scene, and she is called a cross. So remember, the title is Noughts and Crosses, so she belongs to the cross side. Now, she is a member of the dark-skinned ruling class, whereas Callum is a naught who was a colourless or white member of the underclass who were once slaves to the crosses. So what you should recognise there is the writer, Mallory Blackman, has almost flipped over our history as we know it, and she's changing it up, which gives us as readers time to think about the history of racism in our society. Callum and Sephi have been friends since early childhood, which may have given them problems anyway because they're from different races, and as the title suggests, there's 2 sides and there might be tension there. In this actual scene, we're quite a way into the play, and Callum is trying to get Sephi out of a shopping mall before a bomb goes off. Okay, so you can see the stage directions at the top. So they're in a cafe at the Dundale Shopping Centre with cheesy shopping mall music playing in the background. Sephi to audience. Mother was driving me nuts. In our 5 long hours together, I'd bitten my tongue so many times it'd swollen up to the size of a football. If she asked me for my opinion on one more pair of shoes, I couldn't be responsible for my actions. I sipped my orange juice, grateful for the time alone. She'd gone back to the car park to pack away her various purchases. She was enjoying herself. I'm glad one of us was. Callum charges in. Sephi, you've got to get out of here. Callum, where did you spring from? Never mind that. You've got to leave this place right now. I haven't finished my drink. Never mind your ruddy drink. You have to leave now. What's going on? Don't argue. Out. Come on. An elderly cross man approaches. Excuse me, love, but is this boy troubling you? No, he's a friend of mine. He wants to show me something. Callum drags Sephi out. A loud alarm goes off. What's going on? Move it, come on! Seffi to audience. We ran towards the nearest exit. We stumbled out into the spring sunshine, and still Callum had hold of my hand and was pulling me after him. Run, come on! Where are we going? Thank God it took me almost half an hour to find you. Quick! Callum, I'm getting a stitch. Tough, we've got to keep going. Callum, enough! She pulls her hand out of his. Suddenly, there's a huge explosion. We see shoppers blown in all directions. Seffi and Callum land near one another. When this is over, we hear the sound of sirens. Oh, Mother! Oh, my God! Seffi exits. Okay, guys, so that was my best acting that you can have in lockdown. So what I want you to do is the same as what we always do with these extracts. If we're in class, we'd be sat there now highlighting and annotating the extracts. You guys might not have printers or might not have printed the extract to do that, which is absolutely fine. What you can do is either on screen, like escape and you can highlight it on screen, or just do a few bullet point lists of any of the sections or quotes in the text that you think would best answer the question. Now remember, the question is, how is tension being created? So any feelings to do with fear, worry, anxiety, stress, any parts, and that can be stage directions as well. Think about if they create tension, and it would be great if you can start thinking about why they create tension too. I want you to spend about 5 minutes on this. If you're just doing this on the screen, obviously I'll move over in a minute, and you can go back a screen and pause and pick out the quotes you want. After that 5 minutes, I'll go through some that I've selected for you if you were struggling, and you can pinch those if you want, or it might give you an idea of the sort of things you need to be picking out. Off you go. Okay guys, so hopefully you've spent 5 minutes, you can spend longer if you want, 10 minutes on that task for me. And as you can see here, I've picked out a couple of things and I've put them into bold and changed them to the colour red. Now, I'm going to talk about one of these as to model what you need to do as we move through the PowerPoint. You can pinch one of the ones that I've picked out that I don't write about if you want to, but there's loads of other stuff in there that you've probably found, and if we were in lesson we'd spend probably too long talking about that. So the first thing I've picked out for you guys today is a stage direction actually, and all it says is Callum charges in. However, I think this really creates quite a lot of tension in the scene just from that verb, charges. The action in itself shows you that something is urgent and serious, and he's desperate to reach Seffi. So to open the scene in this way is immediately just starting to indicate that there might be something wrong, which might make the audience feel perhaps a little bit tense, and shows that this character Callum is also feeling tensed or worried at this point. Another one that I picked out is where Callum says to Seffi when she's a bit bothered about her orange juice, "Never mind your ready drink, you have to leave now." Now, what we have here are lots of short, sharp sentences. It could be showing that he's panting, he hasn't got time to explain things. They are command sentences, so you have to leave. In the word, single word sentence there, now. So he's instructing her and he's serious, so you could talk about that. The writer has also decided to put that word now in capital letters. So if we're thinking of this in terms of a play script, that's indicating that Callum should be probably shouting that, or at least saying it with quite a lot of urgency. If he is doing that, then that is telling us that something's wrong. Okay, clear instructions, things are getting serious now. And the last one I've picked out for you today is this random part where the elderly man who's across like Seffi comes over and interrupts the conversation that's happening. So the first thing really there is why this would cause tension might be that because this is slowing Callum down. We know he's urgently trying to get her out before a bomb goes off, and this man is then going to see what the problem is. So we might be feeling like Callum there, where we want to just sort of say, hurry up, quickly get on with it. Also, I've sort of hinted to you guys, and you should sort of remember this, that there is a divide between the noughts and crosses. Seffi and Callum are on each separate side, yet are still friends. But the fact this black man who's a cross comes over to check that Seffi's okay could make us think that there might be a little bit of conflict or some tension between the two there. So we could look at this in two ways, really. There are lots of other ones in there, and obviously you can look at anything you like if you believe it's causing tension and that you think that you could talk about it and explain why. Okay, so let's have a look. I've decided to look at this sentence and talk about this in a little bit more detail, because I actually think it's a little bit harder and a little bit different from some of the things we've done in previous PowerPoints. Now, before I talk you through it, notice that down in the bottom corner again, to keep myself focused on the question, I've just jotted in capitals that word tension. So I'm always linking back to that question, or that key part of the question as I am coming up with my ideas. And that's something that you should probably try and do as you do these things, so, or think about as you're writing stuff up, because it will mean that you're really focused in your writing. So let's have a look at this this quote then that I've picked out, which I've talked about a little bit more. So here are my ideas around it. So first of all, I put there that the dialogue is being interrupted and it's at a crucial moment, so we might feel frustrated by this as well as the characters, especially Callum. What I've just jotted there is I've put an arrow off this, because at the beginning I said we're going to talk about language and structure. Now, this is a structural device, and often we spend a lot of time only talking about language and find talking about structure a little bit tricky. So this is actually a structural device. The writer has deliberately added this elderly man interrupting them for a reason. Remember, it's not a real story, it's been crafted, and I think the writer's deliberately done that to kind of slow down Callum and cause that tension. So having that entrance of this character talking when he is a structural device being used. At the bottom, you can see I've got a big bracket around the whole sentence. Overall, this sentence is kind of bringing us back to this idea of Callum being a white boy, and at this moment he probably looks like he's harassing and upsetting Seffi, this black girl, and pulling her away. This might cause tension in the play because there is conflict between these two sides throughout that entire way through. As a reader, if we've been reading this from the beginning, we would know that and probably find it even more tense than we do when we read this just as an extract for the first time. So, what I want you to do now is go back, pick one of your quotes that you've chosen. Perhaps I always get people to write around, put it in the middle of their page so they've got room to write around it, and start making some notes. How is your quote creating tension? And if you've got time, you might want to do a couple of them, and then you can pick your best one. So when you've spent some time on that, after you've paused this slide, we can then move on to the next one. Okay, so hopefully you've got your ideas about your quote that you're going to talk about. And what I've done now is I've written up all my planning, all my prep into my PE paragraph, if you like. So today I've colour coded it just so you can see how my ideas have been broken down for you. I'll read it all as once today. Sometimes I read a sentence and then talk about it, but I'll read it all at once and then just go back and point out some things for you that you need to be aware of when you're writing up your paragraph for your teacher this week. The writer creates tension by using interruptions within the scene. This is shown when an elderly cross man approaches Seffi and Callum and asks, "Excuse me, love, but is this boy bothering you?" The interruption here by the cross man is creating tension because Callum is desperately trying to get Seffi to safety, but this is being delayed. This would cause the audience to feel the frustration that Callum is, as they would be understanding his urgency at this point in the scene. Another reason that this could create tension is because the audience may wonder if some conflict may arise when the elderly man starts to question Seffi. We know that there is a lot of tension between the noughts and crosses throughout the play, so it wouldn't be unusual to see it here as well. This interruption, therefore, creates a real sense of panic at this point for the audience, which would build even more tension. Okay guys, so here is my my P paragraph again, but what I've done is I've just drawn some arrows on it this week so you can see what I'm talking about as I explain what I've done. So on here we've got in the red at the top, the writer creates tension by using interruptions with the scene. So this is the key bit, the key point that I'm making. I'm talking about interruptions and how they cause tension. The blue bit is me blending in the evidence. So I've put this all into one sentence to introduce my quote. Now sometimes this can be really tricky. The more and more you practice this, the easier it will get and you'll become more natural at it. So try and spend a little bit of time to see if you can get your quote to blend into your sentence, because it creates a much more fluid piece of writing. Now we have a massive chunk that's in green. You might notice on there there's sort of two shades of green, but it's not that clear. So we have two kind of explanations in one, and this is where we're getting an explanation and then an analysis. Now the things that you should try and do when you're explaining and analysing is trying to look for layers of meaning, okay? So you might say it's suggesting one idea, and then you might look at another interpretation. Now when we do this in class and we share all of ideas, it's easier to get layers of interpretations because we can all share our ideas. When you guys are sat at home, it might take you a little bit longer to come up with multiple reasons for a writer using certain language or structural techniques. But it's good that you're doing it on your own, because when it comes to you ending up at the end of your time at school, you will be in an exam doing it on your own. So this is probably brilliant because it's making you much more independent. I've got another arrow in here where I'm leading us to talk about the audience. This is the same as talking about the reader, okay? But you talk about the audience usually when we're talking about a play. And if you can comment on the effect of the audience, how they might be feeling, what the writer might be wanting us to think, then that's really good, because you're showing that you understand that this is a crafted piece of writing. At the end, I've put it in red again, and this is because it links to our opening point, and I'm bringing it all the way back round, so it's almost coming round in a circle. This makes sure that you're indicating to the person marking your work that you've kept focused throughout it, and it links back to your opening point, so it keeps bringing you back to the question. And if you were doing this as sort of an assessment or an exam, you would write multiple paragraphs, and it would just keep you on track as you were writing the whole way through. Right, so enough of me rambling on. It's now up to you to write your own paragraph. You can flick back through this PowerPoint as many times as you want and have a look at my example paragraph or my example planning, looking back at the extract. And I'd like you to have a go at writing your own paragraph about this play script. And it's a little bit different to when you talk about a novel or a poem. So just give it your best shot. So again, we only want one paragraph. We're not asking you to write a whole essay. And again, you can see all your teacher's email address is listed there below. If you're struggling and you're not sure, don't ignore the bit of work and think, well, I haven't got a paragraph, I can't send it. Just drop us an email and we'll be happy to help you. You might have part of it, you might say, I want to do this quote and my idea is okay, just for a little bit of reassurance, and then you can have a go at typing it up, and that's what we're here for. So just one opening paragraph. Your teachers will cover this kind of work in your live lessons as well. So if you're struggling, you might want to wait till the live lesson and then have a go at it afterwards, because sometimes it helps when you're going through it and you can ask questions in the chat box. I hope you all have a lovely week, and we look forward to marking your work.